brother! Shoot dang, y'all, Nagini has long been a bit of a mystery to me as it pertains to the greater Harry Potter lore. She kind of arrives out of nowhere when Voldemort discovers her in the forest of Albania, and we know that she's no particular brand of snake, just especially venomous per Arthur Weasley in Order of the Phoenix. It sounds as though you're trying to sew yourself back together! What do you mean that's the general idea?
How dare you!
I just love Arthur's love for Muggle stuff.
Tell me, what exactly is the function of a rubber duck?
But Nagini is full of unusual and unexplained bits of magic. We know that Wormtail milks her because apparently that venom can be put to good use. Also, by the way, I love that Frank Bryce overhears Voldemort saying that this needs to be done, and he definitely has no idea that Nagini is a snake. So when Wormtail says that Nagini is like off exploring the house, Frank can probably only assume that a rogue cow is loose in the middle of the Riddle house. Moo! But anyway, it's not unusual that a magical creature's venom can be very powerful and useful. We know that Slughorn practically foams at the mouth at the opportunity to harvest a bit of acromantula venom at Aragog's funeral, so it could have all sorts of unknown magical properties. But we never truly learn why Nagini was residing in the forest of Albania in the first place. Like another huge corner of the lore that just remains unexplained despite Nagini being there, Lord Voldemort retreating there, and Helena Ravenclaw hiding the diadem in a tree there. Then we also discover in Fantastic Beasts that Nagini is even more unusual because she's not just a snake. She's in fact a Maledictus, a former human with a blood curse that causes you to slowly and permanently transform into a beast. An interesting piece of information, but with that story left unfinished and Nagini being completely absent from Secrets of Dumbledore and the series otherwise being canned means we have no idea how or when she turns from seemingly benevolent to a key piece in Voldemort's game. So today I want to explore one very specific instance where I believe Voldemort had a unique plan for Nagini. Today, we discuss. Hey, brother! Here at SCB, we will always have a bit of a soft spot for Nagini. It was one of our early predictions that she was formerly human on the channel that we made months in advance of the reveal, and Claudia Kim, who plays Nagini, was literally sitting in the chair in front of me when they unveiled the trailer that gave the information away. Nagini. But that doesn't mean that as a theorist who focuses more on the books than the films, that I'm not still a little bit confused about her character, how they met, that is to say Lord Voldemort and her, and why she's so loyal to him, or why Voldemort is so fond of her. The running idea is that they would have met in the forest of Albania. Voldemort explains that this is where he retreated to after his defeat in Godric's Hollow. Only one power remained to me. I could possess the bodies of others. I sometimes inhabited animals, snakes of course being my preference, but my possession of them shortened their lives. None of them lasted long. And Albania is interesting, to say the least. For one, it's not clear if Albania refers to the actual country of Albania or Scotland, which in some historical context is or was known as Albania. Overall, Scotland makes more sense since it's closer to literally everything else, and the country of Albania seems a hard place to travel for Voldemort while he's in his like spirit form, but all we can do is just audibly shrug at that one. There are a few key characters though who have a relationship with this place in particular. We of course have Voldemort, Quirrell, Wormtail, and Bertha Jorkins, who are all just kind of tied to one another. Voldemort, or Tom Riddle, I should say, likely knows of this place because of Helena Ravenclaw, aka the Great Lady, who hid the lost diadem of Ravenclaw a literal millennium ago, which lends credence to the potential for it to be the forest in Scotland as it may have gone by Albania back in the 10th century. Then there's Nagini, a former human whose ailment may have forced her out of society. And all of this suggests that the forest is a place where people are either hiding themselves or something else. But just because it's a mysterious place doesn't inherently make it a haven for dark magic. Helena Ravenclaw has a dark history, specifically having been murdered in the forest by the Bloody Baron. She was just using the forest as a hideout, not for nefarious purposes otherwise. Unless, of course, you're her mom and you're sort of like, hey, where'd you take our crown to? And it's like, I don't know, I'm in the forest and I hid in a tree.
Take no safer place, not one. Except perhaps Hogwarts.
But the point is, if Nagini at some point finds herself permanently transformed, Maybe she also discovers the forest for a similar reason. It's a safe place to go. Also, just as a brief aside here, in this way, it almost seems like the forest is similar to the Room of Requirement when it becomes the room for hidden things, except specifically for people instead. Irony would be that Tom Riddle would take the diadem from the former and hide it in the latter.
Except perhaps Hogwarts.
This brings us to the question of how Voldemort and Nagini must have met. If she's hiding in the forest of Albania already when Voldemort arrives, does she naturally align with the dark spirit, or is it something else? Well, if we go back to Voldemort's line from earlier, let's consider this. I sometimes inhabited animals, snakes of course being my preference, but I was little better off inside of them than as pure spirit, for their bodies were ill-adapted to perform magic, and my possession of them shortened their lives. None of them lasted long. Then if Voldemort's spirit encountered Nagini, I can't help but imagine the circumstances might be slightly different, given that Nagini is no ordinary snake. She is in fact a former human and witch herself.
Are you a good witch or a bad witch?
I'm a snake.
And this is of course all guesswork, but I can't help but imagine that this makes some difference in the scheme of things. Basically, I could see Nagini being far more equipped to handle the embodiment than an ordinary snake. And this would mean two key things. One being that Voldemort's control over Nagini isn't thanks to his ability to speak Parseltongue. And two, it might mean that Nagini's willingness to cooperate with his initiatives is beyond her control. If anything, it would be more similar to how he controlled Quirrell. He was easy to bend to my will. He brought me back to this country, and after a while, I took possession of his body to supervise him closely as he carried out my orders. But then he goes on to explain the toll that it took on Quirrell during his occupation was simply too much. The servant died when I left his body, and I was left as weak as I had ever been. So here's my thinking. Voldemort returns after his attempt to steal the Philosopher's Stone with Quirrell to the Forest of Albania. He's weaker than ever when he discovers Nagini, a creature that fits his preference and uniquely capable of being occupied. And he resides this way until he is ultimately discovered by Wormtail 2 years later, who, as a reminder, happens to have Bertha Jorkins in tow. Wormtail, displaying a presence of mind I would never have expected from him, convinced Bertha Jorkins to accompany him on a nighttime stroll. And Bertha Jorkins, who might have ruined all, proved instead to be a gift beyond my wildest dreams. And the gift that he tells his Death Eaters about is how she was a gold mine of information, knowledge of the Triwizard Tournament being held at Hogwarts, and Barty Crouch Jr. still being alive. But I think it's possible there was something else, because we know that despite Dumbledore's theory that Frank Bryce was used to create the Nagini Horcrux, the author has gone on record clarifying that it was actually Bertha Jorkins, which is a strange clarification to make when it seems like the story is telling us that it was Frank Bryce and Bertha Jorkins died so closely. So what's the difference? Well, follow me here. If Voldemort is in the forest for 2 years, occupying Nagini's body, controlling her actions, and then discovered by Wormtail with Bertha Jorkins, and we know that Voldemort's occupation of creatures and Quirrell can ultimately lead to their untimely demise.
Yes.
Then I think it's highly possible that Voldemort grew an affinity for Nagini, as Dumbledore correctly points out. She underlines the Slytherin connection, which enhances Lord Voldemort's mystique. I think he is perhaps as fond of her as he can be of anything. He certainly likes to keep her close, and he seems to have an unusual amount of control over her, even for a Parselmouth. He is not fond of Nagini the woman. He is fond of the container, the snake-like form uniquely capable of housing his soul. So here's where things get interesting. I believe his occupation of Nagini destroyed the woman inside, and his usage and ultimate fondness for Nagini isn't the former human. It's what it always is with Voldemort. Himself. So what does he do? He destroys and then replaces Nagini's soul with his own. His latest Horcrux, the last one that would complete his set with the death of Bertha Jorkins once she was no more used to him. That is why Bertha Jorkins was a gift beyond his wildest dreams. And this explains why he loves Nagini so much, how he has such extraordinary control over her in particular. This explains why Harry could see through her eyes specifically when she attacks Arthur Weasley in the Department of Mysteries. It's not only because she's a Horcrux, it's because she very simply is him. Unlike the Horcrux inside of Harry, who has to compete with Harry's whole and good soul, the piece of Voldemort inside of Nagini exists entirely on its own. And this is how the otherwise quiet and sweet Nagini, as we knew her as a woman, could go on to be such a fierce ally to such a formidable foe. And it gets even better, because after acquiring Nagini, Voldemort creates a new ritual of sorts after his kills. It's the same outcome we can believe came with Frank Bryce, the threat he positions at Peter after his blunder with Barty Crouch Sr., and the expected fate of Harry in the graveyard, and eventually this. Charity fell with a resounding crash onto the table below, which trembled and creaked. Several of the Death Eaters leapt back in their chairs. Draco fell out of his onto the floor. Dinner, Nagini. Nagini eats the victims, making her his ultimate Death Eater. But y'all, we need to take a brief pause right there to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Let's just take a minute to discuss workplace stress. It's a thing, even when you own the company. The fact of the matter is that no matter what, our jobs provide income, and that income can lie at the center of our livelihoods. That's where therapy comes in. I think many people assume that therapy is for severe situations, but sometimes what you really need to do is just sit down with someone who can help you reflect on how you're living your life and what tweaks you could make to make a huge difference in the long run. And if you guys watch this channel, then you know that nostalgia has a firm grip on us as people. Like, let's escape to the simple times where we enjoyed our favorite books, movies, or TV shows. But sometimes remembering the activities, hobbies, or passions that filled your cup long ago can find a resurgence and breathe fresh life into your daily enthusiasm. It seems so obvious, right? Like, do the things you love. But I think we sometimes fight that urge or see it as self-indulgent. But mental health is important to both Jay and myself, and it's why we give our staff a no questions asked window to take any time needed for therapy. And as the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Plus, our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/super. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/super. Link in the description down below. Now back to the video. Okay. Real tinfoil cap time / bonus theory? We know that Nagini is fearsome and powerful. Her venom not only helps restore Voldemort's body, but is incredibly damaging to her victims. We also know that she possesses the unique power of occupying a body herself, namely Bathilda Bagshot. A skill that totally hails back to Voldemort saying the only thing he had left to him after his demise in Godric's Hollow. Only one power remained to me. I could possess the bodies of others. So, depending on your perspective, either Nagini shares this power with Voldemort, or it's simply Voldemort using this power through Nagini as an agent of sorts. So, consider this. We've long discussed Voldemort's plan following Harry's defeat in the graveyard. He doesn't want anyone to know he's back, most especially Dumbledore. Sirius, Bill, and Lupin explained to Harry in Order of the Phoenix. His comeback didn't come off quite the way he wanted it to, you see. He messed it up. Or rather, you messed it up for him, said Lupin with a satisfied smile. How? Harry asked perplexedly. You weren't supposed to survive, said Sirius. Nobody apart from his Death Eaters was supposed to know he'd come back, but you survived to bear witness. And the very last person he wanted alerted to his return the moment he got back was Dumbledore, said Lupin, and you made sure Dumbledore knew at once. Aha! But if Harry was supposed to die, and Voldemort was worried about Dumbledore upon his return, how does he get through the night if Harry never returns? That would raise major red flags. Well, we here at SCB have long theorized that he meant to send someone back under the guise of Polyjuice, as Harry Potter. Keep the ruse alive that they've been using the whole year with Barty Crouch Jr. But what if it wasn't supposed to be Polyjuice for once? What if Nagini was meant to go back, a Trojan horse, if you will, inside Harry's body? Because, after all, who is the first person to come to Harry's aid when the portkey does take him back? Then a pair of hands seized him roughly and turned him over. Harry! Harry! He opened his eyes. He was looking up at the starry sky, and Albus Dumbledore was crouched over him. But it's not Harry, is it, Dumbledore? Man, y'all, this one was so much fun to write. I was super excited about it. We kind of just started with the mystery of Nagini. One of the things that has always bothered me ever since we discovered that she was formerly a human is what on earth happened to her to ultimately make her align with Voldemort in such a terrible and fearsome and deadly way. But I personally believe that at long last, we just might have the answer. I think that Nagini, as we knew her in the Fantastic Beasts series, was destroyed by Voldemort, and Voldemort placed nothing but himself back inside of that container. Let me know all of your thoughts in the towel section down below. But y'all, as always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you'd like to go way back in time before any of us knew all this additional lore about Nagini, you can check out this video right here when we first predicted that Nagini was formerly a person based on nothing more than a promotional image for Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. But otherwise, until next time, bye! And don't forget to eat cheese. Nagini is no ordinary steak. She's not a steak.